Okay, so we are live. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, I am coming live today to do our weekly live sessions. So, of course, today we are focusing on just sharing a little bit more about how um, podcast has been going and just give you guys some update also. And so I want to first get started by saying thank you, all of you, for your support. I mean, we've done so well in the podcast community. There have been a lot of downloads. So I appreciate all the those of you who are listening to the podcast. Make sure you are sharing it with your families and friends. Don't forget, you can always leave me a message. I love to hear from our listeners. And also, you can rate us. If you feel like giving us a star, a 5 star, whatever, you can rate the podcast. And what that does, it helps us to, for at least the algorithm when it comes to searching the podcast on Apple and various platforms. So you can give us a star if you feel like it. And also, you can leave a comment, you can subscribe, and you can also download the podcast. All right, so let's get right into what we're here to do today. Again, my name is Faith. I am the founder and host of this amazing platform, the Lift All Voice podcast. I think this is more of a platform because there's so much that we're going to be covering. And I want you guys to be a part of the conversation. So just that way I don't feel like I'm talking to myself. So feel free to comment and I want to hear from you guys, and also subscribe to this video if you are watching us on YouTube. Also, so as you guys know, I started this podcast it's been a month now since we started, and it's been such a great experience. Just all the things that I've learned from this experience myself, and just being able to grow really through the process. And sometimes when you start something new, it's so fresh and you don't really know how and where to start really, and it just take a lot of different parts of it, like researching, learning, and growing throughout the process. But today I want us to talk about excuse me. I want to talk about a little bit. Basically, the topic is like how a simple story changed my life, right? And basically, but before I go into that story, I want to share a little backstory about myself. For some of you who already heard the story, I'm sure you're tired. You're tired of hearing it, but it's my story, and I think it's important to tell it, right? So I was adopted at the age of 14 years old. And I came from Africa. I was a young girl on the orphanage. When I relocated to America, I was living with a family who took me in, and they did really what they could. But it was very difficult. I'm not going to lie. Being a teenager and trying to adapt to a new country, a new culture, a new environment. It just like, if you move anywhere, anytime you move somewhere new, it always takes a lot of adjustment. And for me, that was the case, really. But really, I wanted to share about how a simple story changed my life. And this is something that I think we all can relate to. So, but before I start, I want you guys to, the question that I want to kind of start with today is, if you can tell us, really, I want to hear from you guys. Tell us about maybe an event or a time or a story that really changed the course of your life. Something that happened that you thought, wow, this is something that really put me either on the path to where I am now, to make drastic change, or to be a better person. Whatever outcome you had from those experiences, I want to hear those experiences as well, because I see those as a learning tool for myself too, because I'm here to learn just as much and to grow from all of you. I always been a firm believer that a story, like story do change lives, and I feel as though whenever there's certain stories and events, just life events, right? Over the course of our life and through our lives, that really set the pace, that really makes us think and say, wow, we either need to look at this and maybe make some changes, or maybe just try to make things a little bit different and take a different path, or try to get some answers from our experiences, right? And try to figure out how we can grow from that. So for me, it all started when I went to an event. This was in 2017. The exact date, I remember this date because there are certain dates and things that you remember when you go through life experiences. And for me, this day I will never forget. It was October 27, 2017. So it's been almost going on 3 years since I had this experience. So what it was, at the time in 2017, I had this daycare, a childcare business that I was running. So I had to go. There was I had to go to a class. So I went to a class, which is like a workshop, and I wanted to learn more about childhood, how to, trauma, and just everything that has to do with raising a child. So I went to this event, and of course, I had no expectation. Sometimes when we make decisions in life, we don't know what the outcome may be. And I just went because I felt like I needed to learn more to help me in where I was, right? So as I started this process, I got to, it was at this local college, university here in San Antonio, Texas. As I went, I saw all these group of people, and it seems like we were all on the same mission, right? To get some type of education about how to raise a child and how to cope with other aspect of raising a child. So as we went throughout the day, there were different classes, different workshops that we were allowed to attend. So I had the opportunity to go to various, amazing lecturers. I mean, we have experts from different fields, and it was very empowering and moving. So when we got to this point where we had to go to the next class, I remember going through the hallway, and there was a lot of people at this workshop. So each of us trying to get to our next class, because I mean there is a limited seating. So I was hoping to get there as fast as I could. So I ended up going through this hallway, and I remember seeing this group of people. And as I looked on the left side of my eye, and I saw this door, a classroom door that said, how trauma affects a child. Now, that was for me. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but I saw that and I thought, and then I looked at it again and I read it one more time. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. This is very interesting because I really didn't know that this is something I needed to be a part of, right? So I think I ended up just going because I was like, you know what? I need to just go and learn and see what is there. So as I entered the classroom, luckily there was enough seating, so I was able to have to find a seat in the back of the class. So here I am in the middle of this class, and there's all these different people from different walks of life, and we all have the same, I guess, similar goal, I would say, because we were there, we were eager to learn, eager to really be filled with whatever information we were being provided with. So I got to this class and I studied, and I remember this lady, and her name is Clarissa. She introduced herself, just like any workshop, introduced herself, told us a little bit about what she was here for, what she was going to be teaching us. So as I sat in my chair, just watching her, I remember thinking, this is very interesting. So as she continued, she talked about her story, and she talked about, again, the topic was on how trauma can affect a child. So she went and she was talking about her own personal story. So she expressed a little bit about how, as a child, her father was an alcoholic. And he also was, so he was an alcoholic, but he was very abusive to her mother. And so there's different things that happen, experiences as a young child that really traumatized her. So she carried a lot of these trauma over the years, not really knowing how to express it, how to own it, and how to really heal from it. And as she expressed her own experience, And I realized, I started looking at what I started thinking about what she was saying. And instantly, I mean, this was an expert who knows everything that has to do about trauma, I would say. And she's done many, big workshops and presentations all over the place. And I felt like, wow, I felt like she was speaking to me. Like that message she was giving, it was for me that day. Because up to this point in my life, I had struggled with trauma, childhood trauma, and I really didn't know anything about it. Like I've never heard about trauma and the brain and how it affects a child. I didn't know any of it. So as she continued talking, giving this lecture, she expressed her story. She expressed that how she was, how she overcame her trauma, and how she was able to use her voice to now become a social worker, and to be able to really help a lot of people. So I felt so empowered, and I thought, wow. As I heard her talk about her father and how abusive he was to her mother, and how she was affected by that abuse, I too felt very connected to that, because as a young girl in Africa, I had similar experience where, in my case, it was a male figure who was meant to take care of me, meant to nurture me, meant to love me, meant to really protect me. But it turns out the opposite. He wasn't doing that. He was actually doing the opposite. He was abusing, he was manipulating, he was, mistreating. And so I really had a lot of struggle with that. And then fast forward after that, growing up in a home like that, and then I was taken to an orphanage. So I had all these different things that, life experiences that I had experienced on the orphanage as well, before now being adapted to America at 14 years old. So over the years, I had carried so much trauma from my childhood that I really haven't focused on. I've never really expressed it. I've never really talked about it. I've really never really sat down and processed my trauma. I just kept living life to the best I knew. I was in this like flight, I think it's freeze flight mode all the time, just constantly just trying to survive. Um, but from that day on, so here I was in this class, and this woman, this expert, is talking about trauma and how it affects a child, and I felt moved. So once I felt moved, and she talks to us, and this was a 1 hour class. This was a day my life would change. And this story, this lady's story that she shared with us, it changed my life. Like, I mean, she talked about different aspects of trauma. She's a world-renowned speaker, so she has a lot of knowledge, and she got a lot of, academic accolades. So she knows what she's talking about. So there was a lot of educational parts of it, piece of it. But the thing that I really kind of just focused on for me, and that really connected me to her, was her story. Right. And that's why it's so important to share our stories, because you never know who you're going to impact by sharing your story. And so I remember listening to her, and I said, I could find myself, and I saw myself being a part of her story. And some part of it was like I was living that. And I was like, this is me. I have experienced similar trauma as a young child, and you just not allow me to own my trauma. By hearing her story, I was able to not like just own it, and now realize what it was. So after everything said and done, we finished the class. She came out and she had announced to us, she said, listen, if anyone in here would love to connect with me, to talk to me, I'm going to stay out after class, and I would love to hear from you guys. And I would like to hear your story and see how we can connect. So throughout this talk, I am sitting there just bawling, I'm crying, and I was so moved emotionally. And I remember her saying, I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear your story. And I said, damn, this is awesome. So, but I was so shy and embarrassed. I didn't want to go and talk to her. So after everything said and done, I walked out the door, and I stood next to the classroom. As people were coming out, as people exited the classroom, I just kept waiting. She kept talking to them, different people. So she reached out to me. She came outside and she saw me at the door. And this lady expert, she said, hey, yeah, she said, how was the meeting? How was the class? And I said, I can't really talk. And I was like, oh, it was such amazing. It was such an amazing class. I felt moved by your story. I said, thank you so much for being so brave and courageous and sharing your story today. And I remember her saying, well, this is not my story. It's everybody's story. She said it's a lot of people's story. People going through trauma in their life, they just don't know how to heal, how to go about it. And she had encouraged me from that day that she told me, hey, listen, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here for you. And I didn't believe her. So this is what happened. So she gave me her business card and she said, I'm going to be here for you. If you need to ever talk to me about anything, if you have any question, I would like to hear from you. So I said, okay. So I started, she gave me a business card. I was so excited. And I came home. From that day, from October 27, 2017, things hasn't been the same for me. In a way that she encouraged me. The conversation we had was maybe lasted 5 minutes, me and the expert at this presentation. But I remember her encouraging me. She said, you need to go and seek help from a professional, psychologist, a counselor. And I said, wow, okay. Prior to this time, I've never really seen any type of help for my trauma. I just remember that I struggle a lot when it came to just different part of my life, like even this, when I'm able to speak in public, I get my stomach gets tight and I get very, very anxious. So she really encouraged me. So when I came home that day, I told my husband kind of, what happened. And he said, you know what? I think she's right. You really need to look into counseling. And I thought, well, I don't think it's for me, I can do it by myself. I don't know anybody who's been through counseling, or it may not even work for me. And I remember my husband saying, you never know unless you experience something. So you have to take the leap of faith and try it. Guys, I'm telling you, when I came home, I was able to connect with a local therapist in San Antonio. And for those of you who are watching, if you are a military spouse, which I am as well, and if you ever need help with counseling, therapy, anything as such, you have resources available to you. Okay, and you can go to any military base, and at the Family Readiness Center, they do have resources for military families. So if you struggle with anxiety, you struggle with any type of help, if you need any help with any type of suicide or whatever it is, psychologically, you can get help, and it is free. You don't have to pay for any of the services through the military. And you can also call your TRICARE program, insurance, military insurance, and they can guide you as well. So just wanted to share that with you real quick because I didn't know about all of this. So I ended up going to a counseling session, and honestly, to be honest, it wasn't what I expected. I felt I wasn't able to really talk about my feeling and things like that, and I felt like maybe I wasn't ready. Because also I feel sometimes when we want to start counseling, we feel like everything's going to be taken care of right then and there. The expectation is that, oh, I'm going to be healed, that my life is going to be changed immediately, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you have to go more than once. You have to go more than twice. You got to keep going. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to be open to speak about your trauma. So I struggle a lot. And I went to that, and then I also had a lady coming through the house. So if you ever you maybe live by a college or university, there are programs, right? If you they have either students that are in the last year, or they're doing or maybe they might be actually doing their residency, and they can actually pair you with that person, that student. They come to your house and they do counseling with you. So I tried out a little bit. I had a girl coming here to the house, and she was helping me with little things here and there. But honestly, I prayed a lot during that time. I just kept praying that I will have the energy, and also just God will help me to get through it. Before I go forward, let me just make sure I'm not missing anything over here. Let me see. So once I experienced that, and I went to this event, a workshop, and then I came back and really started looking into healing myself. And I wanted to heal myself, not because it was my husband that asked me to do it or because my kids. No, it was because I needed to do it for myself. Number one. Because sometimes I feel like, especially being a mother, like, we have to be very careful. Because my biggest fear when it came to my trauma was and I'm still am, like, I'm afraid that I'm going to transfer my trauma to my kids. So, because it does come out, trauma can come out in different shape and form, right? Sometimes you're angry, you don't know why you're angry. Sometimes even as an adult, we may throw a fit. So everybody is affected by my trauma. So I needed to heal myself. I needed to find a way to heal myself, to be able to be whole, to be at a place where I'm able to be comfortable, and maybe not 100%, but comfortable, where I'm able to manage my trauma. And for me also, once I started doing all of this researching on trauma, which I've never heard of it before prior to going to this event, I learned so much about how and why trauma, if it's not taken care of, can affect a person at any point in their life. And then sometimes we have to know that too, that trauma doesn't have there's not really a face to it. Like, some people don't wear it on their face. It's not something that you can see and notice right away. There are people who you can notice, but a lot of times you can't. And trauma it can affect you if you don't treat yourself. If you don't get some help, it can turn into different aspect of mental health, mental issues, and things like that. So I just wanted to share that story with you guys today. Just to encourage some of you, if you guys, because I know, let's be honest, COVID-19, this is also a traumatic time. It's a traumatic event. A lot of people are being affected by it. So by being vulnerable today, hopefully this is something that can inspire somebody to want to look into figuring out what the trauma that you carry, that you've been carrying for years, that you don't even know exists. And how can you look into getting some help, right, to heal yourself? So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I look forward to, being live with you guys again soon. Hopefully next week. And if you guys are watching here on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Because if you do subscribe, we will have more video coming up for you. That way you don't miss any of the videos. If you're on Facebook Live, make sure you type in hashtag replay if you're watching the video at a later time. And then if you're live right now, you can type in hashtag live. Live with live. Thank you guys so much for being on this video with me today. Again, this is all I have for you. And we are lifting voices here. I lift our voice. We're lifting voices through storytelling, one unique story at a time. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week, and talk to you soon.